Hi everyone, this training is to go over the basics of the Novo toolbar here and the ribbon, and really to go through each of these, just give you a basic understanding of what these sheets, where they take you and all the shortcuts that are involved to really kind of make your use of the Super Workbook as easy as possible. So real quick, I'm using a sheet that already has some data imported. It's not complete, but it does give us a base to work with. So starting over here, previous tab, let's say I'm doing something in the property bucket, and maybe I want to go to the summary matrix for a minute, and I'm here and I want to take a look at it, and I'm done with that, and I can't remember, it's not easy where I just was, so I can just go ahead and hit this previous tab, and it'll just take me right back to where it was. So a great, easy function, pretty simple. Yeah, so moving along, the Launchpad. Here, you are going to spend quite a bit of time in this, going back and forth between this, and this is really a good flowchart for you to understand what's been completed and what needs to be completed throughout your work in the Super Workbook. So the real purpose of this is to guide you through what you need to import, which will be listed right here, any pre-steps that need to be completed prior to the analysis, and then finally the analysis. So what functions you use here will depend on what type of report you're doing. When you're doing a market study, the appraisal function would not be necessary. And when you're doing an appraisal, depending on what value scenarios your client has asked you to do, you would only do those. So some of these will remain gray, but once they have successfully been completed, they will turn green. So once it's green, you're good to go. And as you can see, there's several different imports. There's the optional imports, and this is really used for mainly market studies, and then presets here. And I will say the whole project flowchart, once you've completed things, throughout the property bucket and on different sheets, it does flow through. So once you've already designated a subject property on your property bucket, it will go ahead and turn this green. You don't have to go ahead and click this to designate the subject property. So the whole Super Workbook is very interactive, and once one area is completed, it will show up and flag it as completed in these sections. So it's super helpful, but also if you just want to go quickly to somewhere, you can hit, okay, I'm ready to conclude to my achievable LIHTC rents. You can click on that, and then, here you go. It brings you right to the concluder data, right where you need to be. So this is just kind of an easy method to take you really where you need to go and double check what you've done and what needs to be done. And that's primarily the purpose of the Launchpad. And a couple of these sheets below here, I just want to talk about quickly. There's some controls at the bottom, the critical imports. This is necessary information that you need to have in there before you complete your Super Workbook. Again, just like I'd mentioned before, if we click on this, see, as you can see, some of them have already flowed through because we've already done it in other sheets. So again, this is an interactive tool, so it will, if you've done it in another sheet, it will already flag it as yes, so you don't have to do it twice. So moving back to the Launchpad, and then there's another sheet here called the Navigate sheet. Okay, so this is going to show up in a few different places, right? So real quick, the Navigate sheet where we just clicked on is also the same as the Sheet Finder. Ooh, all right, so that is a helpful tool, and also if you hit Control M, it will take you directly to here as well. So there's several different shortcuts and ways, and this really is just it's an easy find your sheet scenario, right? So if you're looking for something and you're like, oh shoot, I'm in the middle of the market study and I forgot I needed to add something in the demand, you could go right here and you can click on it, and it's going to take you directly to that sheet rather than trying to have to scroll down here. So it does save you quite a bit of time. And, just kind of quickly, we've grouped these into organized sections of the report. And something else that is pretty handy that you'll see is this worksheet groups right over here. So this will take you directly to the group of sheets that you need for these sections, right? So I just clicked on subject, and if you can see, it just changed it all down here to take me to there. If I go on supply, it's going to take me to all of these supply tables down here. If you can go ahead and follow my mouse down here. Demand, once again, takes me right to where the demand sheets are. So the default, also just a heads up, just takes you back to the normal view you were at before. So it's just something that's really easy and quick, and this is, again, something you will also, use a lot of. Here, under the project, there's a couple of, again, we've got the import menu that takes us right back to this Launchpad, which is a good resource. And then, so the import menu does that, and there's also the critical imports. And this is, again, the same sheet. So like I said, there's a lot of overlap, but it's just because these are the sheets that are important, and we want you to double check and triple check these kinds of things. So here, something that is handy is the conclusions. And we're going to come back to this in a minute because this takes a little bit more time to go through. But if you're ready for your conclusions and you want a quick and easy way to go through them, we can go ahead and click them here. So let's go back up to this top ribbon for a minute and walk through some of these other sheets. So we just went through Sheet Finder. You're going to see there's a whole bunch. See, there's Data Finder, Data Import again. Critical Inputs again is right up here, so it's easy for you to use. All of this up here, where it says Property Bucket, Appraisal Bucket, General Income Limits, if you just click on it, it takes you directly to that sheet. So these are some of the most frequented sheets, so they're just kind of a quick click away. Moving on down, these the appraisal function, the front end, again, it just takes you to those sheets. So if you know you're doing the front end of the report, you can click on these. And these are, everything's already imported, so we can go through and cut and paste into our Word document. So that's just a super handy format there to get to these sheets quickly and easily. And then sheet functions is just basically that. If you need to sort or hide or unhide, you're not going to be using this a ton, but it's there when you need it. All right, so moving on down, the clone current section. If you need, for some reason, to copy a table, let's just go ahead and say we want to copy this table. And maybe you want to adjust something or whatever you want to do that you want to change it. We don't necessarily want to change within these sheets because there are so many formulas already embedded. So what you can do is select the table or the area that you want to go ahead and clone, and hit clone. And what it does is right next to where you are is it creates this custom clone table. So you can go ahead and rename this if you need to, however you want. You can just go ahead and say, senior household cloned table, or whatever you want. I do recommend changing it so you don't have clone 1, clone 2, clone 3. This way it'll just kind of keep your sheet a little bit more organized. So that's a pretty handy tool. And it also just puts it in a blank sheet, so there's no formulas. It's just raw data. So this is, you're not going to mess anything up if you go ahead and change it within these. So we do ask, if you are going to go ahead and change anything, use this function here. Again, so formatting tools, again, pretty straightforward. Same with specialty tools. This is for if we need to test the PMA or look up distances and map different addresses. So that's pretty handy. And then also we've got the Office's TDRES. So if you need to directly go somewhere and find something or find a report, you can go ahead and use this, and it'll quickly take you there. All right, so let's go back to the conclusions on the Sheet Finder, because I do find this very helpful and useful and want to walk you through these. And I'm not sure how many of you are using this or going directly to the sheets. So if I go ahead and I hit the conclusions, the rent conclusions. What this will do is it'll take me to the rent inspector. And this is just another format where instead of actually working in the sheet of Excel, it's just a nice, easy, formatted area where we can see the data that we need and not see all the rows and all the tables and all the stuff that Excel has in it. And it just allows us to go ahead and put some of these, our conclusions in here. So this one here is for the achievable rent, right? So first of all, I do want to say on this right-hand side over here, we do have a couple different scenarios. So if we're doing a building scenario, let's say we're, as proposed or as is, this particular example, we only have an as proposed. But if we were doing an appraisal or, a market study that had as is rents or anything like that, we would go ahead, we could have different inputs for these two. So we're as proposed. And then next down here is the rent scenario. We've got restricted LIHTC, and then unrestricted. So the restricted would be if we had any kind of a subsidy, right? So this example does not, so we don't need to enter anything into there. But if we were concluding to a subsidized rent, we would go ahead and put it in there, but we don't often do that. For the restricted tax credit, here we can go ahead and put in our achievable rents here. And what's really handy is that it gives us over here the average, minimum, and maximum. All right, so we're on the restricted scenario, so it's pulling already the average, min, and max of our comps of the tax credit units at 50, 60, whatever. So I just pulled some random data, so these may not look great, but they are numbers. So we can go ahead and it just helps us conclude to where we want to be. If we go ahead and hit the unrestricted, as you can see, this changes quite a bit because it is now we are just looking at market rents. So here it's pulling, instead of those tax credit comps, it's now pulling the average, minimum, and maximum of the market rate comps. So we can go ahead and conclude here. It's just an easy tool. So really, basically, this is all we want to do. I will say you do want to make sure once you're entering in here, let's just throw in some numbers. Well, actually, let's go, let's just throw it. Yeah, we're just going to arbitrarily throw in some numbers here. You do want to make sure you hit save conclusions. So whatever you're adjusting, make sure you do that. You don't want to lose it, and you want to make sure it flows through to all of the other sheets. So that's that. If you are working on an appraisal, you can go here and select your scenario. I had just inputted, we were doing as proposed, restricted and unrestricted. So if I wanted to go here, and once this was complete, I could hit the load PGI table, and it'll take me right there. And as you can see, I didn't enter anything in or save anything for the as restricted tax credit, but I did go ahead and put those rents in there for the unrestricted. So it flowed right in and it loaded it right up. So now I have my PGI for the market rate unrestricted scenario. So basically that is what that is used for. And I think it's a very clean way of entering data. You can use whatever is easiest for you and whatever you're comfortable with. But again, this is just to show you that this is available and is an option. Now, the other, so that was the conclude rents. So here, let's go now take a look at the OPEX, concluding to OPEX. So if we click on that, again, it's going to be like the rent inspector, and it's going to give me a clean, non-really Excel format to enter in our specific operating data. Now, basically, we've already imported the historicals and the comps, so you'll go ahead and see them over on this side, right? So if we have historical data and we are existing, we'll enter it in and we'll import it, and then we can go ahead and it basically gives us the information here, and then it'll show us the low, average, and the high, which really makes concluding a lot easier than having a ton of information in the Excel sheet. So we have that for historical. We also have that for comps. Clearly, if you're a proposed project, you're not going to have any historical, so you would just go ahead and bypass that. And then there's also the benchmarks. And this is coming from operating data that Novogradac has collected over the years. And we've put together a benchmarks based on the geography here of where your project is located and the size bracket. So meaning how big your property is. So here's some standard data that can help guide you in determining your operating expenses. I'm not going to go into too much more detail here because we have another training video that specifically goes through all of these and really how to enter and what to enter, and importing and everything from doing an operating expense analysis to including it in an appraisal. So from there, we'll just go ahead and wrap this training up. We have covered all of these, and I hope this is helpful and will save you some time. As always, please contact me with any questions, and I would be happy to answer them. Thank you for your time.